All right, so I'm just coming on to share my thoughts per usual. So this video is going to be a little bit about me, but I think it'll help you. And I kind of wanted to create this video because let me just say, for the longest of time, I really didn't think my gifts were going to get me anywhere. You know, I struggled to take anything that I had done seriously. And you can hear this anxiety and this more sense of insecurity in my earlier works, and even some of my more recent works, where I'm constantly downplaying the gift. I'm like, it's not going to amount to anything. It's not going to, and that was a bit of a protector for me, because I just hadn't seen it. I didn't know what I really could do with a gift. And so anyway, there's that. But it's a little chilly out, so I've got me some elderberry tea, and I'm just kind of excited to make this video. As I typically am when I am able to come and record. It really gives me a sense of purpose because I just believe that teaching is that's the way to go. So there's that. But I want to say that one of the biggest challenges that I've had with educating in underserved communities is that you have a bunch of people who are very headstrong in what it is that they know, even if what they know is misinformation, right? Even if they are uneducated, they believe that they know what they know, and it's really hard sometimes to break those barriers. Something that is super concerning to me today is the mass information that is spreading, right? I talked to some of my relatives, and it's conspiracy after conspiracy after conspiracy. And for people who believe conspiracies, hey, but I just think that as African Americans, we don't really have time to dabble in conspiracies. First and foremost, we are gatekept for most industries and institutions. So I believe that if you want to know something, you need to go and find out for yourself and go figure it out for yourself. I also believe that conspiracies are a waste of intellectual energy. I think it's misguided intellectual energy, right? So really what conspiracies are is it's a misaligned critical thinking. That's how I view conspiracies. We didn't see it. These are, theories and ideas that haven't been proven, and I just think it's a waste of mental energy. And I think a lot of times we dabble in conspiracies because it's easy to kind of go down a rabbit hole than it is to finish a 250-page book. And that doesn't, that I knew when I had this idea in mind, when I had this thought in mind that I wanted to communicate, I knew that it was going to come off a bit like superior. And so that's not my intention, but it is to say, I think it's time for us to debunk the conspiracies, right? Meta is getting rid of its fact-checking databases, or I don't want to say databases, but it's getting rid of its fact-checking, kind of like analog, whatever software that is integrated in that. We know Meta is across all of our predominant social media sites and our networks. And so what you're really having, and as I mentioned with my relative, is that you have a bunch of people who want to have a conversation about certain things, but it is completely misguided. This then becomes a bit of an echo chamber, and now you have a whole populace of people who are uneducated. Recently, in my city, they just shut down a alternative school because of mismanagement of funds. And I was thinking about this as I was thinking about Black Lives Matter, and the millions of dollars that were mismanaged. And something that I've kind of found across the line. So with this alternative school, it was Dawn. It was for children who were kicked out of public schools, which you can look at that like it's, merely defiance, right? A bunch of children who are defiant, they don't want to be here. But we can also acknowledge the fact that Black boys are discriminated against, as well as Black girls. I do think that colorism does play a bit of a role in this, in the mistreatment. So there's a lot of factors there that I've kind of observed. But when you think about the possibilities, right? This is also a school that provided adults the ability to go get their GED. Very briefly, I talk about the crack epidemic, how it impacted my family, how we went from, as African Americans, being a little bit more church-going, more communal, to the introduction of, I don't want to say hip-hop because I know, cultural critics, study cultural historians of hip-hop and things like that are going to come from me. I'm not saying this to solely critique. Well, I kind of am, but I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I know that hip-hop has done a lot in regards to advocacy. It is an art form. It is expression. There are some positives there, but something that I think is perfectly depicted in the film King Richard is this example that I'm giving, right? So, you have the Black family, there's communal values. We have a collective understanding that what we want is equality. What we want is to be in these spaces where we have equal access to the, better paying jobs, or, education and things like that. And we want a shot at the American dream, right? Post-civil rights era, right? And so there's the introduction of rap. And then there's gun violence, right? And then there's the promotion of the degradation of the Black body, promiscuity, hypersexuality, and all these different things. And so it gets lost on us, right? And so instead of going to school, now you have a young generation of boys who want to be dope boys, right? And that was a thing, right? This is why we have the mass incarceration, and not necessarily from a Reagan standpoint. Well, yes, because it was drugs, but not specifically marijuana. And what I'm saying is that I watched and witnessed how so many Black men were criminalized for selling marijuana. And then you fast forward to today, you have the opening of smoke shops, right? White people got their hand in the cannabis business. CBD is booming. It's the cool, popular thing. But there was, and I don't even think somebody needs to write a book about this, but there was a sweeping incarceration of Black men who were incarcerated for dealing marijuana, which is now legal today. And I think Biden was kind of working on this. I didn't follow up with it. I don't know anything else about it. I don't know, what that ultimately resulted in, or if it's anything that is an effort that is still ongoing, but that happens in real time. And so you have that, right? And so you have a bunch of boys who are dropping out of school. And so that the alternative school that I'm talking about really served as an opportunity for education for a lot of young African Americans. And so I think what you're going to have today, because you have the push that education doesn't matter, right? You also have the long-standing history of like the bullying of being the Black nerd, right? That experience, I can just speak for myself, is incredibly socially isolating. I think I'm at a point now where just through my persistence and through God's guiding light that I'm finding my community. I'm finding people to connect with who are African Americans, who are scholars. I think something else that I'll just go ahead and interject here is geography plays such a huge role. I can't stress this enough. I mean, when you think about an underserved community, don't just think like, okay, just Black people, Black bodies, right? Think just deprivation. I'll never forget, I went to LA. I was on my 24th or 25th birthday. I went to LA, and I remember on my way home, I was just deeply grieved. I never had realized how I was living in so much deprivation as an African American. I never realized how bad my city was in regards to its lack of resources, just communally, but also culturally for African Americans. I was deeply grieved. I was deeply, deeply grieved. I mean, even in regards to food scarcity and food nutrition. So it's real. It's real. And I see her today, and it's like, I just found out about, just connecting with other people online, looking at the different, communities and resources and things like that are in other cities. It really will rewire your brain. But when you're not someone who is persistent in researching this information and finding these people, you're not diligent. I mean, you'll just be stuck here, in deprivation in communities that are underserved. And so you'll just kind of get swept up in misinformation, right? And it's that's the thing that's heartbreaking the most, because, in so many words, you don't even get an opportunity, right? This is why it's like, honestly, it is a battle, right? Literally consider it a battle to resist becoming a product of your environment. I don't even think we talk about that plight as often as we should. It is incredibly difficult, and the little people that do have it, right? You got the guys who had the drug money, who, finagled their way in and, made some things happen, but it's now a matter of standing on top of others, right? That's something that I think a lot of Black business owners don't really understand when you start talking about entrepreneurship, is that your entrepreneurship is based on, right? It's predicated upon Black dollar, right? And the Black dollar, don't look at it like this conglomerate. Look at it like the neighbor next door. You know what I mean? Look at it like your cousin down the street, right? Because these are the people who are building your business. These are the people who are, contributing to what it is that you're building. And Bell Hooks talks about this, and she's, of course she speaks about it so eloquently and with such an ease, right? She literally talks about just economic disparities and how for a lot of African American men, when they're in position to be mobile. They're not typically given to the Black community. They're not typically given to their Black families. And we know that this is not something that is, within the minds of every Black male. I think that's something I want to work on, is trying to find the language to speak to this epidemic of males that is very real, right? But also shining a light and leaving way for a lot of Black men who are very progressive and, very upstanding, So anyway, I said a mouthful there, but I just think that it's so important now than ever to be educated. For me, I started with the books, and it's just literally, I feel like I sit with my life and I know that God is real. I know for every African American, we have all had a struggle with figuring out what that work, what does it mean to us? We're trying to figure out what that relationship is like, right? We've all kind of been conflicted in our faith. There's so many layers to that. I don't even think that there's enough time. I think there are multiple books that hit on the subject, but I don't think there's any one particular book that I can recommend that really speaks about this divisiveness that I think is within all of us. I mean, it's truly like we're really just divided in a lot of ways in regards to our faith. But I mean, I remember literally when I left college, I was like, I don't want to be uneducated. I didn't want to be depicted as unintelligent. So I hit the books. I literally remember putting words up. One of my words was acumen, right? It was acumen. I remember putting words up. I don't even know if I was getting these words from a dictionary or if I was just Googling random words. But I had them on sticky notes in my bedroom. And that was in 2018. And fast forward, here I am today. I've written essays, and I just never thought that it would even progress to be what it is today. And now I've built this community with almost 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, this is awesome, and I'm still growing. There was a comment that I made in a previous video about white Americans and their resistance, or not their resistance, but their stance against Trump. And I was like, I don't know why they're even fighting against Trump. And that was a pretty ignorant thing to say. So I say that to say I'm still growing, but I'm so grateful that I've amassed a community and I've amassed a following of people who like the work that I do. And it took a while to get here. I mean, you start talking about imposter syndrome. I don't think I really felt like an imposter, mostly because I do the work. I think you feel like an imposter when you don't do the work. I did have a moment when I was teaching in the community center where I did feel undeserving, but I didn't feel like an imposter. I just felt undeserving. I felt like it was such a huge opportunity for me. That's not a big thing for everyone else, but it was for me. But I also experienced a lot of discrimination as I was going in there. I was showing the film of Dr. Kajufu on to be smart or to be popular. I mean, to be popular or to be smart. And, experienced a lot of backlash. All of the white faculty came into the classroom, in and out, a lot of conversations there. I literally felt like I was in a hot seat just for teaching African American studies. And that was a big revelatory moment that let me know that this is needed, but also that, oh my God, this is going to be met with such great resistance. And being a part of a faith community, more so religious community of people who are anti-social justice, who are anti-African American history, right? Who are color neutral, so to speak. I didn't feel the support that I had. I didn't have that support, so I questioned whether or not the work I was doing was credible, whether or not it was needed, whether or not I knew what I was talking about, whether or not, it was divisive, right? And, that was very challenging. So I thought about giving up. But every time I tried, I would hear something, see something, and it was like, I just can't give up. I really feel as though it is a calling for me. The mental energy, the capacity that I have to just not stick with something more so, but like really engage with ideas. I do think that is something there. And I just love learning. I think you get faster with understanding concepts and things like that the more you learn. And so, I look forward to seeing what God has for me. But yeah, I just want to say I want to take this seriously. I struggle with YouTube because I did not have any of the theatrics. As you can see, I don't ever have a thumbnail. Some of my earlier videos, I kind of tried to do a thumbnail. And then, there's also this aspect of liking fashion and things like that. But I can say as I've grown older, it's not a priority of mine. So that's why I titled the channel Books and Good Looks, because I was like, well, maybe I'll do fashion. And everyone's like, well, you can do it all. And so I was like, well, maybe we'll do it all. But at this time in my life, consumerism is not really, and I don't want to say consumerism because my money definitely goes on books, but not my biggest priority. And so there's just a little bit about me. And I just hope that this encourages you. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, but I just hope that this encourages you guys to stick with your gift. You know, stick with what it is that you have. Continue to be persistent, because it can grow into something very beautiful. Like I said, I literally started this with sticky notes on my wall, you know, because I literally wanted to just learn new things, you know, learn new words. I wanted to, it started with me having a desire to expand my vocabulary. And here I am today, right? And it is literally remarkable. And I feel so grateful because it's kind of like a celebration of all of the hard work. And it's hard work in the sense that nobody else can really see it, right? People, you know, have their opinions, or they may look at me and they're like, well, what changed? You know, there are some things that have changed. I've grown externally in some ways as well, but I mean, just, you know. And so I'm going to end here. I know you got something from this video. Comment below some of the things you would like to see on the channel, some of the things you would like to talk about. Would you like for me to go live at a specific time so we can all kind of sit and engage? Share your ideas, share your thoughts. You know, I would definitely appreciate it. Now, I'll take that into consideration. I was going back a couple nights ago, actually looking at some of the old comments as a subscriber suggested, and I was just amazed because some of the more popular or you know, channels that have more subscribers were looking at my YouTube channel at such an earlier time, before I had even really paid much attention, you know. And so I'm very grateful that I've kind of stuck with that, and I'm trying to stay in that space where we just remain authentic and not rely on the validation, but recognition feels great, you know. And so I'm grateful to know that, you know, there are people watching this channel that I wouldn't even think will be watching this channel. So that's awesome. I'm very humbled, and I just look forward to continue to doing the work. So you guys have an amazing Sunday. Stick with the gift, and make time to learn. Peace.